Thanks very much, candidates, and thanks to all the community panelists for asking those questions. I'll open it up to the floor for questions in just a second. I'm going to put this microphone over there, so if anyone wants to ask a question, you can stand up at that microphone, and I'll put it over there. Just as people are lining up, I will put a question back to the panel, particularly to Glenn, because Kathy mentioned a couple of things, Glenn, about, for instance, that the housing is mentioned in the Liberal platform. It's quite thin and it's non-specific. I guess you've listed off accomplishments. You have a lot of ideas. You know these files quite well, and I guess the question that is left in my mind, maybe some others, is the Liberal Party, is Dalton McGuinty team as committed to these issues as you?
I think it's extremely so. Because I've gone through the NDP platform for 6 months, and I didn't see the word housing or affordable housing, so I'm glad that it was so important. We've got tax cuts coming out from my wazoo with the NDP platform, but no mention of affordable housing. So if affordable housing is more important to the NDP than tax cuts, then why are tax cuts been on the platform for 6 months and several chapters of that, but housing hasn't been one? Rent guaranteed income housing exists in the Liberal platform as a commitment to work on RTI. Being the minister responsible for social innovation, we've had for 6 months, with many of you in this room, developing a policy which is online, open source, wiki, and we said we'd be accountable for implementing it, and you can see it transparent, and you've co-authored it. So that's much more important than a platform. That's a commitment that already has money behind it, and I can get into more details later about that.
Well, as I mentioned, our platform is to be released still. You know how leaders do that throughout after the grid is dropped, there are still announcements to come. I know you're the Minister of Innovation, and Michael Shapcott and others in this room have bookshelves of research on housing, and it seems to me that innovation would include, really developing a provincial housing program and putting money into housing. So that's what I'm arguing for.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm just going to shout, but I don't need to say much. We'll just give the first person here a chance to ask a question. We've got about half an hour for this, so we'll get as many questions in as we can. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just going to jump in first to say, if you have a card and you want to ask a question, Susan and I are going to just go down the aisles periodically and pick them up and bring them around, okay? So just wave your hand at me or something like that. Thanks. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Bright, and I'm here representing John Moore Society of Toronto. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with who we are, but if you're not, we work with men who are in conflict with the law or at risk. And I am a housing worker, and each day we are faced with seeing individuals in and out of the prison system. Most of them are homeless or have become homeless because of being back and forth in the system. And a lot of our guys have mental health issues. That being said, we went to the government, the previous government's board has promised to increase the number of affordable housing. So far, we haven't seen that. And I'm going to ask, what would each of you do with your government to take response to the needs of the marginalized population in order to increase the safety of all Ontarians?
Is there anyone you want to hear from first? Or?
It doesn't matter.
Mark?
Just in general, I would advocate for more housing units, and I think we would have to specify that certain units are set aside for people in special situations, such as people in John Howard Society or special needs and things like that.
I mean, the research has been done, for Helen and everybody, and for folks that are clients of Elizabeth Fry as well, it's the same situation, revolving door, and it's not dissimilar to the City Streets to Homes program, because even with good, amazing housing workers, you have people coming into situations where they need to be housed, and they're put into what's available, and what's available sometimes is a pretty scummy room with shared bathroom and maybe not a lock on the door, and the situation is horrible. So it means that we have to bring on new units of housing now. You know, we have to allocate funds to that. It's just that simple. Like, we have to bring more stock on it, and we have to look at specialized types of housing and support it, and not be NIMBY about it. So that includes harm reduction housing, it includes, you know, transitional housing, and we have models like this galore across the country from previously when we once had a national housing program. So I didn't explain the button that some of you are wearing. The button, the 1% button, is to remind us that we once had a national housing program where the feds and the provinces were spending about 1% of their budget on housing. So that's what we have to aim for to answer your clients' needs. Keep up the good work.
It's been a pretty sad battle. My previous life, when I was elected mayor of Winnipeg, I was chair of the City Mayor's Caucus, and the very first thing I did the first week was hosting 22 mayors in Winnipeg and just declared a national housing crisis in November of 1998. And a few years later, we finally won, and we had a national Liberal government that brought forward a national child care strategy that Ken Dryden signed with every provincial, a national housing strategy, a national transit strategy. And on December 8th, that government, about a year later, was defeated. And we've had Conservatives ever since who have withdrawn completely from housing, have cut back, are now building prisons on a massive level, right? So we've now got a national government that thinks prisons is the solution to that. Having fostered a few kids who went through that, nothing happens to children in prison because, well, usually it's 14, 15, or 16 going to youth detention when they learn to be more violent and get beaten up and feel less safe and get more into survival plan. And that's the national agenda in this country right now, and it is truly disgusting. So what we have to do, I think, is we've learned one thing. Every government has made a great effort at it. The NDP, when they were in power, made a good effort at it. I'm very proud we spent $2.5 billion, which is more than any other party in power has paid in housing. But we have to start introducing the market mechanisms that I suggested, so that the people who can't afford housing as the only reason they don't have shelter, we can eliminate that barrier. And we can build the affordable housing for kids with fetal alcohol syndrome, for the number of women that are escaping abusive men, and that we can create those for people whose barriers to housing are more than economic, because that's where you really need the support. And I think for all of you who've been participating in the community planning process in Toronto Centre, you've heard some brilliant ideas from the not-for-profit centre about what we can do to liberate some of the existing capacity we have in Toronto. So, thank you.
I'd like to thank you guys for answering my question, and good luck.
Take another question here, and then I'll ask you a question.
For some young adult